scary Peppa Pig episode that never made it on TV. It was a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning when Peppa woke up in her bedroom, but something felt different. The sunlight streaming through her window seemed dimmer, casting strange shadows across her toys. As she walked downstairs for breakfast, she noticed that all the family photos on the wall had changed. In every picture, their smiles were too wide, their eyes too dark, and they all seemed to be looking directly at her. Mummy Pig was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with her back turned. When she finally faced Peppa, her smile stretched impossibly across her face, never wavering, never blinking. "Good morning, Peppa," she said in her usual voice, but the words seemed to echo strangely in the bright yellow kitchen. Daddy Pig sat at the table, his glasses reflecting nothing but darkness, reading a newspaper that appeared to be completely blank. George came bouncing down the stairs, clutching his beloved dinosaur toy. But as he got closer, Peppa could see that his favorite green dinosaur had changed. Its plastic eyes had turned completely black, and its mouth seemed to be frozen in a silent scream. George didn't seem to notice anything wrong, giggling and playing as if everything was perfectly normal. After breakfast, Peppa decided to visit her best friend Susie Sheep. The walk to Susie's house felt longer than usual, and the familiar neighborhood seemed somehow different. The trees were the same bright green, the sky the same cheerful blue, but shadows fell in places where there should have been sunlight. When Peppa arrived at Susie's house, she found her friend in the garden, playing with Rebecca Rabbit, Pedro Pony, and the rest of their group. They were all standing in a perfect circle, holding hands and singing a song Peppa had never heard before. As she approached, they all turned to face her at exactly the same moment, their eyes reflecting the same darkness she had seen in Daddy Pig's glasses. "Come play with us, Peppa," they said in unison, their voices creating a strange harmony. The circle of friends began to move closer, their synchronized steps creating a rhythm that matched the beating of her heart. Peppa wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The school bell rang in the distance, even though it was still morning. The sound seemed to break whatever spell had held Peppa frozen, and she found herself running toward the familiar red brick building. But as she got closer, she realized that the school was much larger than she remembered, stretching impossibly high into the sky. Inside the classroom, Madame Gazelle stood at the front, but her usual warm smile had been replaced by something that made Peppa's skin crawl. All the other children sat perfectly still at their desks, their hands folded, their eyes staring straight ahead. When evening came and the family gathered around the dinner table, they all sat in perfect silence, their food untouched, their eyes fixed on Peppa with expressions of patient expectation.
Deleted Peppa Pig episode. Peppa and the Daddy Who Didn't Come Back. Right, which was never showed on TV. One day, Daddy Pig left for work in the city and promised to be home for dinner. Evening came, darkness fell outside, dinner went cold, but Daddy still hadn't returned. Mummy Pig was worried. Peppa clutched her teddy, and George quietly said, "He's nearby, but he's not the same." At midnight, the front door creaked open. "Daddy!" Peppa cried out joyfully and ran into the hallway. He was standing in the dark. Same face, glasses, beard, kind eyes. But something was wrong. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. "Hello, family," he said in a strange voice. "I've missed you so much." He started acting oddly. Didn't eat, didn't sleep, just stared into the distance. And at night, Peppa heard him talking to himself. More precisely, to the mirror. "You did well. They believed. Just a little longer now." The next morning, his eyes were pitch black, and from under his shirt, a long stretch of gray skin peeked out. Mummy Pig tried to call the doctor, but the phone wasn't working, and Daddy only said, "No need anymore. I found my true self. Daddy Pig is obsolete. Now I'm the one who breathes through walls." Then he vanished, simply melted into the hallway, leaving behind his skin neatly folded. And that night, a familiar voice echoed through the house. "Peppa, where are you? I missed you. I want to wear you." Deleted Peppa Pig episode Peppa and the Creature Under the Bed, which was never showed on TV. One night, Peppa woke up. A cracking sound had woken her, like someone snapping a pencil, right under her bed. She listened carefully. Silence. "Maybe I dropped a toy," she told herself, but still she looked underneath. It was dark, very dark, and she saw something strange, something that couldn't be described with words, something between a pig and a person. Peppa quickly hid under her blanket. "Are you sleeping, Peppa?" whispered a voice from below. She held her breath. "If you don't answer, I'll come out." Peppa trembled. The blanket was pressed against her face. Her heart was pounding. Then, "I'm coming out." A quiet creak. Something was crawling. Under the bed. Then, next to the bed. Then, on the bed. Peppa couldn't take it anymore. She jumped up and turned on the light. The room was empty. Only a note lay by the door. "I hid better. Now it's your turn to seek." Deleted Peppa Pig episode Peppa and the Silent Guest, which was never showed on TV. One evening, Peppa noticed that someone had tidied up her room. The toys were neatly arranged, the blanket was perfectly made, and even her drawing on the wall had been straightened. "Mummy, did you clean my room?" Peppa asked. "No, sweetheart. Maybe you forgot you did it yourself." Mummy Pig smiled, but Peppa was certain she hadn't cleaned anything. The next morning, her toothbrush was wet, even though she hadn't brushed her teeth yet. And it looked like someone had come out of the closet. Tiny hoofprints on the floor. The door slightly ajar. On the third night, Peppa woke up because someone had jumped on her bed, but the room was empty. She turned on her nightlight and saw something on her pillow, a drawing of herself, drawn by someone else's hand. It showed her, but with a crooked smile and empty eyes. In the corner of the page, someone had written, "I live with you. Thank you for not getting in the way." Peppa screamed. Her parents came running, but the drawing was gone. Only a torn piece of paper remained on her pillow with a tiny hoofprint on it. Since then, Peppa is afraid to sleep alone, and no one can explain who makes her bed each morning, even when she didn't sleep in it that night. Deleted Peppa Pig episode The Ceiling Virus, which was never showed on TV, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. It started with a cough. First Daddy Pig, then Mummy Pig. They told Peppa it was just a cold and warned her not to leave her room at night. But Peppa didn't sleep. She heard rustling and creaking from above. Not the attic, the ceiling. One night she opened her eyes and saw Mummy, but not standing. She was crawling along the ceiling, slowly, head down. Her hands clung to the plaster like spider legs. Daddy Pig followed behind her. Their eyes were white, their mouths slightly open, but they were silent. Only the scratching of their feet above. "Peppa, are you awake?" whispered Mummy, without moving her lips. Peppa pretended to sleep. In the morning, everything seemed normal, but the parents didn't eat, didn't blink, didn't laugh. And at night, they crawled again. Peppa found an old newspaper in the attic. Unknown virus turns the infected into night crawlers. Their bodies change. They hunt by sound. The last line was circled in red. Never open your eyes if you hear movement above, even if it's your parents' voice. Now Peppa doesn't sleep. She hears something dripping from the ceiling and whispering. You're next, Peppa. Deleted Peppa Pig episode. Peppa Pig and the Whispering Forest, which was never showed on TV. One day, Peppa Pig and her family went for a picnic in a new park outside the town. Daddy Pig said there was an old forest nearby where children used to play, but no one goes there anymore. Why? Asked Peppa. They say strange sounds can be heard there. At night, whispers calling names. Daddy mumbled with a laugh. But that's all just a story, of course. As the family spread out the blanket and settled down in the meadow, Peppa saw a pink silhouette among the trees. It was standing far away, but it looked familiar. "Mummy, someone's standing over there." "Probably just another child," said Mummy Pig. But when Peppa looked again, the figure was gone. Later, while playing alone, Peppa heard, "Peppa." She turned around. No one. "Peepaw." The whisper came from the forest, like someone was hiding behind the trees and calling her. Peppa stepped closer. In the thickets stood a creature. It was pink with long legs and a bent back. Its head looked like Peppa's, but the mouth was huge, filled with many sharp, dripping teeth. It stared at her with black, bottomless eyes, and it was smiling. "I'm Peppa too. The real one." Peppa screamed and ran. She glanced back. The creature wasn't chasing her, but it was now standing next to her family, and they were smiling at it, as if they knew it. "Peppa, darling, where have you been?" Mummy Pig said sweetly, looking straight at the monster. "You're late, sister," it whispered. Deleted Peppa Pig episode. Peppa, Susie, George, and the Abandoned House, which was never showed on TV. One cloudy afternoon, Peppa, George, and Susie went out for a walk. "I heard there's an abandoned house over the hill," said Susie. "Nobody goes there. They say someone lives inside." "Nonsense," snorted Peppa. "Let's go, we'll just take a peek." George followed behind, clutching his toy dinosaur tightly. The house was indeed strange. The roof was broken, the windows boarded up, but the door was slightly open. "Just a quick look and we leave," Peppa whispered. Inside, it smelled of dust. The floorboards creaked under their hooves. In the corner stood an old mirror, and in it, something moved. "Look," Peppa pointed. "There's someone in the mirror." But the room was empty. It was just the three of them. And suddenly, a hand reached out from the mirror, translucent, like mist. I stayed. "And you will stay, too," Peppa screamed. They grabbed each other and tried to run, but suddenly they heard someone crying. "Peppa," said Susie, "we need to leave, right now." But Peppa stopped. "Did you hear that?" They moved forward, step by step, until they reached a half-open door to a room that hadn't been there before. Inside, in the corner, someone was sitting on the floor. A figure with familiar glasses, a yellow shirt, brown fur. Pedro. He was hugging his knees and rocking back and forth, crying loudly. Pedro. Peppa took a step forward. The figure lifted its head. The face. It was almost like Pedro's. I tried to leave," he rasped. "But she won't let me." "Who?" "The one from the mirror. She's all of us now." And from behind his back, a ghostly figure emerged. And deleted Peppa Pig episode Scribbles, which was never showed on TV. One day at school, Madame Gazelle handed out new notebooks to the children. "You can draw anything you like in them," she said. "Just take care of them. These notebooks are special. Peppa got an old, worn-out notebook. On the last page, someone had scratched, "Do not erase, do not draw jokes." Peppa just giggled. What nonsense. That evening at home, Peppa decided to test it. She drew a bunch of money, and within seconds, real bills appeared on the table, exactly like in the drawing. Wow, Peppa froze. It's a magic notebook. She hid it under her bed and went out the next day to play with Susie. At home, George stayed behind. He didn't know about the magic. He just wanted to draw. He opened Peppa's notebook and drew a funny, round head thing. He, George laughed. The head thing came to eat our heads. He forgot all about the drawing. But that night, Peppa woke up to a sound, scraping, footsteps. From the darkness emerged a figure. It was the head thing, just like in the drawing, only it wasn't laughing. It was hissing. Shh, here I come. Shh, who drew me? I eat. On a fresh page, someone had drawn Peppa with a cross over her face. Deleted Peppa Pig episode, The Last Frequency, which was never showed on TV. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more interesting videos. At work, Daddy Pig was given a strange gift, a radio receiver covered in cracks. "Old but stylish," Daddy Pig exclaimed happily. "We'll listen to it in the evenings." That evening, the radio picked up only static, but exactly at 3:33 a.m., it came to life on its own. In the silence of the bedroom, a voice was heard, quiet, scraping.
"Time to tune in. Time to tune in."
Daddy Pig got up first, then Mummy, then the children. They walked barefoot, heading toward the forest. In the clearing stood an old radio transmitter, rusty with wires sticking out like roots. Around it circled others, just like Daddy Pig, but not him. Strangers. And there, behind the trees, he was waiting. Slender Man. He just stood there. But the radio inside each of them was already receiving the signal. Peppa tried to cover her ears, and for the first time noticed black liquid was dripping from them. The signal was inside. "Turn off the radio," she whispered to herself. "Daddy, please." Daddy Pig, as if hearing through the haze, struck the radio. It cracked, and everything disappeared. In the morning, the radio lay broken. No one remembered anything, but Peppa knows for sure if the radio is ever turned on again, the frequency will find them, and so will Slender Man.